Hey, Ashley here with HeartHookHome.com, and today we are working up the first pattern in my new 2024 dog crochet series, this super chic, super sturdy crochet dog leash. So we have a small version here, we have a medium version here, we have a large version here for the stronger dogs, and I know that you are absolutely going to love this pattern. This pattern comes in a standard leash length, but what's great about it is that you can make yours as short or as long as you like. Let's learn how to crochet this dog leash together. When we go to crochet our dog leashes, we are going to want to use a cotton yarn, and the size of the cotton yarn that you use directly corresponds to the size and the strength of your dog. So here I've got a worsted weight, which is just dishy cotton. It is a 100% cotton because it does not stretch. We want it to stay super strong. This worsted weight would work great for brand new puppies or very weak dogs like 5-pound Chihuahuas or tiny little Yorkies or something like that that doesn't have a lot of pull behind their body weight. This is a 3mm macrame cord, which I will be using for my dog, who is about 20 pounds. She's strong, but she's not that strong. 3mm makes an average size dog leash. Here is a 5mm macrame cord, which I will be using to make my boyfriend's dog, Maisie, a new leash. She is a hunting dog. She's a little bit bigger, and she is very strong. So I'm using the 5mm for her. As you can see, we have our 5mm macrame cord, our 3mm macrame cord, and our worsted weight cotton yarn over here. Now, just as in the different weights of yarn, our clasps that we use for the dog leash is going to be different sizes as well. So you can see that I've got this jumbo size right here that I will be using for the largest dog leash. I have this medium one size here that I will be using for the medium sized dog leash. And at my Ace Hardware, this is pretty much the smallest one they had, so I decided to go elsewhere to the craft store and just get one of these that is a little bit smaller but still pretty sturdy. It feels very strong, like the dog's not going to get off of it or anything, but that would be overkill for a tiny little dog over here. So one thing to note is that you definitely want it to have the swivel here. You do not want it to be stuck in place. You have to have that leash be able to spin around on itself. So this one, even though it's smaller, it does also have that swivel effect, which you definitely want. Now, that being said, we have different sizes of clasps here. We also need to use different yarn or different hook sizes for the different yarn weights. So for this 5mm cord on the left, I'm going to be using a 9mm crochet hook. For the 3mm macrame cord in the center, I'm going to be using an 8mm crochet hook. And for the worsted weight over here with the tiny little clasp, I'm going to be using a regular old 6mm crochet hook. Before we get started, I do recommend that you pull up this tutorial. It is a free tutorial on HeartHookHome.com so that you can reference any photos as needed as you are going along. Now I've got my medium size clasp, I've got my 3mm cord, and I've got my 8mm crochet hook, and we are ready to get started. Technically speaking, what we are making when we are doing this dog leash is we are doing a Romanian cord that starts around this metal portion here. So I'm going to leave a long enough yarn tail that I can use that later on to make sure that my beginning here is super firmly attached. So I'm just going to move this out of the way and start somewhere in here. You don't have to leave a super long tail, just long enough that you feel comfortable weaving that in comfortably and securely. So I'm going to go around this metal piece here and pull up my loop, just like this. Now I'm going to get prepared and do a chain 1 and a single crochet around the entire thing, just like this. Single crochet going around everything. Nice. Now, for the second step in making our dog leash, we are going to rotate, and we are going to make a single crochet in this vertical loop here, this one that's looking like it's off to the side here. We're going to do a single crochet just in that loop there. Now for all other rows of our leash, we are going to turn or rotate. We're going to insert our hook under both of these bars. There's these two loops that are running parallel to each other. We're going to insert our hook under both of those loops. It can kind of be tricky, especially at first, to get your hook in there. The more you have of your leash built up, the easier it is. You kind of get in a groove. Make sure I'm not going through that one as well. All right, and now I'm going to finish that single crochet. So now I'm going to rotate. I'm going to find those two parallel loops to the left, go under both of those, and do a single crochet. Rotate, go under both of those loops, and finish that single crochet. Rotate both loops, and you can see that the more you have of it, the easier it is to get your hook into these stitches and to make these single crochets. But like I said, this is basically just a Romanian cord that we are making starting around that hook there. So I'm going to continue. The average dog leash is 60 inches long. Of course, you can make yours longer if you're needing it for, you know, long country walks or things like that. You can make yours shorter if you're using it for training purposes. But the average dog leash is about 60 inches long, and that includes the handle. So I am going to crochet this dog leash until I get about to 65 or 66 inches. When we get to a point where we are ready to make our handle and our leash is the desired length, for me this is about 66 inches, I'm ready to fasten off and create that loop that will create the arm or the handle for your hand in order to walk your dog. To do that, I'm going to fasten off, leaving a long enough tail to weave in this end securely. So first, I'm going to do what I've done this whole time is rotate, and I'm going to do a slip stitch by going into these two bars here. So I'm going to do a slip stitch like this, straight on through, pull that right on through, just like this, pull it nice and tight, and now we are ready to secure this to the actual leash. So let's lay it down. Make sure that it's not twisted around on itself. You don't want this all wonky. Now we're going to need to use a smaller crochet hook. So here I have just a 4mm crochet hook, anything smaller that you can fit into these loops here to help us weave in these ends. So like I said, you are making your hand loop here about 10 to 12 inches total. So I'm going to fold this down. If you would like to measure it, feel more than free to measure that out. Make sure that you're making it about the right size. I want mine to be about 12 inches total. So about like that. Now I'm going to secure my yarn tail here through this portion of the leash. So before moving, I'm going to insert a smaller hook going through a convenient spot between the entire leash, just like this. I'm going to find this yarn tail and very carefully pull it through. This may be harder to do on video than I anticipated, but very carefully pull it on through. You may not get the whole thing, so you kind of have to pull it just a little bit, which is totally fine. Pull it all the way tight. And now this is going to be how your leash handle looks. Want to make sure before we go any further that this is not twisted around. Mine is, so I'm just going to twist it like this to make sure that it lays nice and flat and that it's not twisted around on itself. I'm going to pull this tight, and now I'm going to use my small crochet hook again to pull it through various parts of the leash. So I'm going to go through this part of the end of the handle right here and this side of the leash here, and I'm going to pull using my smaller crochet hook through these stitches just like this. And like I said, you might miss a strand or two. It sometimes helps if you use your fingers to pull it instead of the hook. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to bring it to this side. So I'm going to come up somewhere, anywhere really, around the side of this portion of the leash, and then up probably through here. And we'll come through both sides of the leash there as well. And you're just going to weave this in as securely as you can, or as securely as you feel comfortable. Get situated. For the size of your dog. If you have a tiny dog and they're not very strong, then obviously you don't have to worry about it being a super secure, right? Pull this yarn tail and get that out of the way. Beautiful. And now I'm just going to continue making sure that this is nice and tight. And what I do recommend, have someone, if you have someone handy that can pull on the other end of this, but kind of pull it apart like this. Make sure that it's not going anywhere. If you see that it starts coming undone a little bit, just continue weaving those ends in. So now I've gone up through here. I will come down through here. We'll do this. Just going around different areas to make sure that that is nice and secure. So now I'll come up the side here, make sure I grab this where this connection is, and do that super well. Beautiful, beautiful. Now, I feel like I can go ahead and start weaving this in. Like I said, make sure that you're pulling it apart as hard as you can to make sure, especially if you've got a bigger dog or a stronger dog. So I'm going to weave in my yarn tail down through the length of the leash for a ways. And depending on what size hook you're using, and how easily your yarn is pulling, you might be able to pull it through 2 of these horizontal bars at once. I like to go down about 6 inches or so, and then we'll go through the center of it and weave it back up this side for the same 6 inches or so. And that means that it is not going anywhere. So I'm going to continue weaving this in just like this. Now that I've gone down about 6 inches or so, I'm going to feed this through to the other side. So I'm going to bring my crochet hook up through this opposite side, and I'm going to try to feed it through exactly where the yarn naturally separates into strands on the inside of that cord. Pulling it straight on through. And now I'm going to do the same thing that I just did, but I'm going to weave it back down this side the opposite way. All right, we are nice and tight. I don't know how well you can see that, but it is not going anywhere. I'm pulling pretty hard. So now I've got my handle ready. It's time to secure our beginning tail here. We did leave this longer tail so that we could do essentially the same exact thing that we just did. So let's work on this together. You can see that it's coming out the back side here. So I'm going to put my hook coming in from this side, anywhere along this first portion right here of this where it's connected. I'm going to pull that yarn tail straight on through. Just like that. And like I said, you might snag it, that's okay. We're just going to keep on weaving in those ends. I'm going to pull this nice and tight. Now I'm just going to weave this in back and forth around. I'm going to go straight through the center to make sure that that is nice and secure. Somehow. You just go until you feel comfortable with as strong as this is. And you may need someone to pull on the other side. I've also found in a pinch, if I'm alone, I put this under my foot and pull on this as hard as I can. That does help as well. Pull up as far as I can. There we go. Look at how nice and tight that is now. And remember that we made this first chain and single crochet going around this loop here, and that is already worked into this. So that is going to be super sturdy. So now all I'm going to do is I'm going to weave in this yarn tail. I'm going to weave it in just like we did with the other side. I'm going to weave it up in here, through the center, and then back up the other side, clip my yarn, and we will be finished. Now I am completely finished with my dog leash. I have woven in all of my ends. I've got my beautiful swivel bolt snap here. I've got my beautiful handle that I've woven in the ends very securely, and we are ready to rock and roll. I did go ahead and complete the larger version as well that I showed you with the 5mm macrame cord and the larger snap bolt, and this is absolutely gorgeous as well. This one is even bigger. It's so sturdy. It's so strong. It is not going anywhere. I also completed a smaller one for the small babies using the worsted weight yarn that we talked about earlier. I did want to point out that in the beginning of this video for the materials, I had one of these that had the ring attached to it. I did go ahead and remove that key ring just so that it would be less cumbersome as a dog leash, and I am very happy that I did that. It still has that swivel aspect to it so that as your dog and you are walking, that the leash doesn't get super twisted around on itself. So I hope you love this dog leash pattern. I hope that you and your dog get plenty of use out of it and that you love it. And every time you walk your dog, I hope you think of Heart Hook Home dog patterns and you come back for more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.